Hi, I'm Chris, and in July 2023, my wife and I decided to do a road trip around Europe. Over 11 days, we'll be driving through Holland down to Germany, before heading to Switzerland and finally driving up through France to Paris, all before crossing the Channel and heading home. We've done many road trips before, but this will be our first time sleeping on top of our truck in our Tentbox roof tent. We've got a great adventure in store and can't wait for you to see it. So we started our journey on the DFDS ferry that travels from Newcastle to Amsterdam. We did contemplate driving down to Dover, as it was far cheaper to set off from Dover and cross to Calais, but for the convenience it just made more sense for us to leave from North Shields. Once on board, we made our way to our cabin, only to find that our key cards didn't work. After heading up to reception to get this sorted, we tried once again. Take two. Inside our cabin, I noticed another little problem. Instead of booking a double bed, I'd accidentally booked bunk beds. It's just down to me not paying attention on when I was booking it on the website. Reception did offer us a chance to change our cabin, but they only had inside cabins available, so we decided to stick with what we had and keep the window and enjoy the view. After dumping our bags, we headed upstairs onto the outside deck so we could look at the view as we pulled out of port. The coast is an area that I'm very familiar with. It's lovely to see it from a different perspective. After we'd taken some photographs and sent some final emails and texts, we headed inside to grab a much needed drink. It was nice just to sit and relax and take in the view after a busy day of trying to get everything ready to leave. We were treated to some music by the on-ship band before a lack of sleep got the better of us, so we headed back to the cabin to wind down and enjoy the sunset from our room. The next morning we were up bright and early and ready to disembark. Our first step was to get out of the port and away from the Amsterdam traffic. We made good progress too, making our way down through Holland in only a few hours. When we finally arrived at our campsite for the first night, we set the tent up and then headed to the lake for a swim. It was quite hot this day, so the dip was a welcome one to cool off. Next we had some food. It was nothing special, but it was just some random snacks that we picked up from the local Aldi, but it was nice just sitting there and relaxing and chatting. I'd highly recommend this campsite. It wasn't too busy and it didn't have loads of kids running around making noise either. The reason we decided to stay on this campsite was because the next morning we headed off to Phantasialand. Now if you've never been to Phantasialand before, it's a theme park located just outside of Cologne, Germany, and it was recommended to us by one of our wedding couples. It's been a while since I've been to a theme park, so I was really looking forward to going on some rides, and this theme park was really cool. It had several different theme worlds, including an Asia-Africa world, a Fantasy Berlin world, and a Mexico mystery world. There were some pretty awesome roller coasters in here too, but to be honest, I just love walking around and soaking in the atmosphere. The attention to detail is so impressive, and the tickets were quite reasonably priced too, as was the food inside the park, so I'd highly recommend visiting for a day of fun, especially if you've got kids. After leaving Phantasialand, we had a 3-hour drive down to our next campsite, which was situated just outside of Baden-Baden, which is near the top of the Black Forest. We found a lovely site, which was huge with lots of spaces. I just booked it online that day while we were queuing up for a ride at Phantasialand, and we managed to get a pitch down at one end of the campsite. We were both pretty tired, so thankfully it was quite a quiet area that we'd slept in, and we just managed to have some tea and bag an early night. The next morning, we headed into the centre of Baden-Baden to one of my favourite places in the world, which is called Caracalla Therma. It's a geo spa that's located in the centre of Baden-Baden. It's a perfect place to relax and unwind. It's a nice baths, but not the kind of baths with slides and things for the kids. It's thermal waters, so they've got an indoor pool, an outdoor pool, steam rooms and a sauna. Just a really nice relaxing experience and a lovely way to unwind. After our time at the spa, we headed down into the Black Forest to a town called Titisee. Titisee has a beautiful lake with a town at one end, so we booked a campsite down at the opposite end of the lake. Because of the distance, on our first night we just decided to stay at the campsite, so we grabbed a burger at the on-site restaurant. The next day we headed out onto the lake with the kayaks. Now the lake isn't too big, which meant we could paddle down to the other end in about 15 or 20 minutes. As you can see, the sun was shining this day, and when we reached the other end, we pulled our kayaks onto the shore and went and bought some ice creams. Once we'd made it back to our campsite, we chilled for a few hours before heading back into the Titisee town for a festival that they had on that evening. We got chatting with a local gentleman while we were queuing up for something, and he told us that the festival was the event of the year, and as you can see, it was super busy. They had a Ferris wheel, live bands, and a lot of street food. We spent a lot of time just wandering around, soaking up the atmosphere and enjoying various different bits of food. While we were busy watching one of the live bands, we looked down at the other end of the lake to notice some black clouds gathering above our campsite. We also noticed a few lightning bolts in there, and while we were expecting some thunder, we thought it was best to head back and settle in for the night. What we did manage to get is this beautiful view on the way back, which was a stunning view of the town from across the lake. What you don't see in this video is that just a few minutes later the heavens opened and we got caught in a really bad thunderstorm and had to run all the way back to our tent. We'd also left the sides of the tent open just because it had been so hot that day, so much of our stuff got soaked wet through and we were absolutely drenched to the bone. But it's these little things that, while at the time are really frustrating, it's one of these things that we'll remember forever. And we managed to lay there all night watching the thunder and lightning through the tent. It was just a fantastic night, if not a little wet. The next morning, when we were partially dried off, we headed into Titisee to go shopping for a cuckoo clock. I've been wanting a cuckoo clock for years, and today was the day. We always try and collect a souvenir when we travel around the world, and this will be our souvenir for Germany. The Black Forest region is world famous for its cuckoo clocks, and this is where a lot of them are made, so it seemed fitting for us to buy an authentic one from here. We continued our journey south and eventually ended up crossing the border into Switzerland. We had a couple of hours to go and did most of this on the motorways to get down through Switzerland and save some time, as we really wanted to get to our next destination, which was Interlaken. If you've never been to Interlaken before, it's beautiful. It's a town located between two lakes, hence the name Interlaken, and it's at the foot of the Swiss Alps. Once we got the tent set up, we headed down the edge of the river for a little walk and we were greeted by a family of ducks who came over to say hi. Following this, we headed down into town to grab some food, and we found a place on Google which had really good reviews. It was just a little pub restaurant in a back street, but the food and the service was fantastic, and I'd highly recommend the barbecue ribs if you decide to visit. The next morning, we headed out for our first day in the mountains. We decided to buy the Jungfrau travel pass. It's not particularly cheap, but we figured it was a really good way to explore the area, and it basically gives you access to all the trains, the gondolas, the cable cars, the boats and the buses, pretty much in the whole valley. Our first stop was Lauterbrunnen, so we caught a train from Interlaken and headed up into the mountains. Lauterbrunnen is also known as the Valley of the Waterfalls, and it's because a lot of glacier water runs off into the valley. There are 72 waterfalls in total, and it's simply stunning up there. From Lauterbrunnen, we took a little train ride up into the mountains. The higher we climbed, the views became more and more stunning, and all the way up we had a perfect view of the Jungfrau. We passed beautiful fields filled with cattle before stopping off at a little town in the mountains. Here, we changed trains and then made our descent down into Grindelwald. One thing that never lets you down in Switzerland is the views, and as you can see, we were truly spoiled. Once in Grindelwald, we picked up a few snacks in the local supermarket and then headed over to catch a cable car to go up Grindelwald First. Grindelwald First is another mountain with a viewpoint high up in the clouds. There are a series of activities that you can do up there too, including ziplining and go-karting back down the mountain. There is also a cliff edge walk which takes you round the edge of the rock face, and it's only mildly terrifying. It was so hot this day that we really didn't want to walk too far, but we did a little trek up to a beautiful vantage point which overlooked the valley below. After spending an hour or so just sitting on the grass and enjoying the view, we made our way back down the mountain in the cable car and enjoyed some more stunning views. The next day was the day we travelled up to the top of Europe. We had to make our way back to Grindelwald again before catching a gondola up to the Eiger Glacier. It was from here that we went to a train station to catch the train up to the top of the Jungfrau. The train itself takes you through the mountain, and the tunnels have been dug out decades and decades ago, and it's a really interesting trip. There's even a viewpoint that you can stop off at on the way up. When you reach the top of the Jungfrau, you disembark the train and head into the station, where you're greeted with lots of shops, cafes, and even the highest Lindt shop in the world, which of course was packed with people wanting to buy their chocolate. Once you leave here, you can head off on the tour and make your way through the various tunnels in the area. You can walk out onto the glacier, taking the view, and even throw a snowball or two if you wish. Inside the tunnels there are a series of information boards which show various different pictures as well as some more information about how they dug out the tunnels in the mountain decades ago. Another wonderful experience is a tour that you can do with a light show, which takes you through a journey in time over the past 100 years of the Jungfrau Railway. There is also an ice palace in the mountain, which is well worth a visit. It's complete with ice sculptures, and we even saw a familiar face frozen in the ice. It's pretty nippy in here, so it's worth bringing a light jacket to put on when you go inside. Once we'd finished our tour, we made our way back onto the train to make our descent down the mountain. Once we'd made our way back to Interlaken, we visited an excellent Korean barbecue restaurant for some food before heading back to the campsite. Just like in Germany, we had some more thunderstorms that evening and an excellent lightning display. The next morning, we woke up early and packed up before the rain arrived to make our way north into France. We didn't film much of this day as we literally spent all day on the motorways, but we found the most incredible little campsite for the evening on the Park for Night app. It was located on a little farm somewhere between Strasbourg and Paris. They only had 5 spaces, but every space had electric hookup and they had a little toilet and shower. The facilities weren't anything special, but they were clean and the owner of the farm was lovely and accommodating. For us though, the highlight was the farm animals running round just outside the tent. There were horses, ponies, donkeys, goats, all of which came over to say hello at some point. Oh, and let's not forget the resident cat. This really was a lovely place and one of the best nights that we had on the whole trip. The next day we continued towards Paris and stopped off in a little town called Troyes. We had a walk around, grabbed some food and relaxed in the sunshine. We finally made it to our campsite just outside of Paris that evening. It was the ideal location for us to head into Paris the next day. We're both big foodies and for years I've wanted to try this particular French dish. We found this place in Paris that served it and headed there. The dish is called aligot and it's essentially creamy mashed potatoes mixed with cheese. It's often served with sausage and garlic and I'm pleased to say it was fantastic. Again, if you're ever in Paris, I'd highly recommend visiting this restaurant and trying this dish. It was beautiful. The whole reason we booked this trip was still to come, so we made our way to the Stade de France to watch Rammstein. While I do like them, it's more my wife that is the Rammstein fan. But even I can appreciate a great show and it really was a fab way for us to spend the last night of our holiday. Our final day was all about getting home. So we made the 3-hour drive north to Calais to catch the ferry back over to Dover. Surprisingly, I'd never actually been on the ferry crossing to Dover before, so it was lovely to finally see the White Cliffs as we made our way home. This really was a great trip. We packed in a mix of fun, relaxation and adventure into only 12 days. If you're watching this video and feeling inspired to visit any of the places that we've done, I would highly recommend all of them. We had the best time and we really did enjoy ourselves. If you're watching this video and trying to decide whether a Tentbox tent is for you, I'm pleased to say that the tent held up very well. It survived the heat, the high winds and the thunder and lightning too. It was very comfortable and we found it a great way of travelling. If you're thinking about buying your own Tentbox tent, I have reviewed a few of the tent models including the Lite XL and the Lite 2.0 on this channel, so be sure to check them out. I do hope this video has left you feeling inspired, and if you do decide to order your own Tentbox tent, remember I've put a discount code in the description of this video for you that you can use when ordering your own Tentbox. It's my way of saying thank you for watching and hopefully it will help you kickstart your own adventures in the future. Before I leave you, I just wanted to say thanks for watching and do remember to subscribe if you want to see more content, and please do leave me a comment if you have any questions either about the Tentbox or the trip or any of the places we've been to. I'm more than happy to get back to you. Happy travels and thanks for watching.